Welcome all to Google Shopping. Now, do you have a specific item in mind but not quite sure if you are getting the best deal? Has online shopping become a hassle for you? We here at Google Shopping aim to provide you, the consumer, the most efficient and user-friendly experience for modern-day online shopping. We want to connect with you and keep you coming back. With our services, you will be able to search millions of items all within one simplified web page. Comparing prices has never been easier. With our integrated shopping cart system, checking out has become a breeze. Orders will be fulfilled right through our web services, worry-free. In order to deploy this product into release, we will need to learn some fundamental methodologies and key roles to get us to that point. Introducing the Scrum Agile development process. In order to understand how Google Shopping will come to life, we must get familiar with Scrum. So what exactly is Scrum? Scrum is a simple framework under Agile methodology that encourages effective team collaboration on complex products. A Scrum team generally consists of self-organizing and cross-functioning individuals dedicated to optimizing flexibility, creativity, and productivity. Large projects can be simplified into smaller incremental release-ready series we refer to as sprints. Each sprint will go through the 4 stages of planning. Each sprint will go through 4 stages: planning, building, testing, and review in a typical time period of 1 to 3 weeks. Here is a breakdown of key roles on this project. The product owner represents the desires of a client. Simply put, the PO has the vision and timeframe requirements needed to execute a sprint and delivers that vision to the development team. Next up is our Scrum Master. Scrum Master will work directly with our PO to create user stories or different functionalities that have been envisioned and now need to be brought to life. These user stories are then placed in an order of importance into a product backlog, which we will discuss very shortly. Finally, meet our development team. Given the tasks and sprints, the development team will make it happen. The team may consist of specialists in UX, QA testing, and more, but ultimately they are a cross-functioning team assuming different roles when needed. In order to maintain transparency and opportunities for inspection, the Scrum must follow 3 artifacts. The first artifact is the product backlog, which we have mentioned earlier. The product backlog is the master document containing all features, requirements, enhancements, and fixes expected from the product owner. Sprint backlogs derive from tasks selected in the product backlog and maps out what needs to be completed in order to bring the sprint to a completion and make the product potentially releasable. Lastly, the burn down chart is a graph that helps every member of a Scrum visualize the time allotted versus work left to be completed. A downward slope is generally a good indicator of progress and will lead to shorter, smaller sprints. Real quickly, let's talk about some Scrum ceremonies, or what we like to call Scrum events. Sprint planning is a detailed outline of what's to be expected of a certain sprint. Using the input of the entire Scrum team, the goal of the planning is to determine what can be delivered and how we can deliver it. The daily Scrum is vital to productivity for the next 24 hours. A 15-minute stand-up meeting forecasts the work expected for that day in order to get closer to the end of that sprint set. Team members are able to express what work they've done since the last stand-up and reach out if they need any assistance. Sprint review is held at the end of the sprint. This aspect is held for the product in mind. It gives a chance for the product owner to demonstrate the product and discuss what went well within the sprint. Sprint retrospective, on the other hand, is the final meeting of the sprint and gives an opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect themselves. Creating a plan for improvements is fundamental to move on to the next sprint.
The role of a business analyst in our team is to make sure how they can communicate with all the stakeholders in our business and also communicate that information with our team of the development team. So in general, in short, the role of our business analyst in this project has to collect the client preferences, and according to that, they have to gather requirements and create feature lists and acceptance criteria. And in this flow chart right next to you that you can see, it kind of elaborates the role of our business analyst and team in our work. And you can see that in summary, the business analyst has to be able to communicate with all different departments to make sure our project runs successfully. And that involves gathering business requirements from the project sponsors and also from the business users. And at the same time, delivering that message to our software development team and QA testing team, providing the functional and non-functional requirements so that the requirements that have been provided to us from the stakeholders can be met. And at the same time, the business analyst also needs to properly communicate the transparent information in a transparent and concise manner so that the stakeholders are constantly being told of the how the project is going on and with the constraints and the expectations that are being met within the deadline. And often then, at the same time, these informations are discussed in our sprint planning meeting with the entire team. Here's a little summary of how our Scrum methodology works overall. And you can see the chart is pretty self-explanatory from how the information is collected to the product owner. We created backlog, and then the team that involves both our Scrum Master product owner and our development team works to successfully deliver the product to the end users. And the overall process I just talked about business analysts is ingrained in our picture over here because they're very responsible in this project to make sure all the information is always communicated correctly with all the necessary teams that you see in this picture.
So when it comes to UX design, it's about usability and art. And these are the 6 steps that we follow to design our product. Let's talk about the very first one. So the very first one is product definition. During this phase, we met with our team to get an idea of what our client is looking for and what kind of problems they are trying to solve through this application. During this phase, product owner or business analyst briefed us about the specifications and requirements of this product. In our case, our RBA specified that we need to build an e-commerce application where people can search for a product and to buy it without any problem. And when they successfully purchase something, they will get a tracking link that will help them to track where their package is at. After getting all the requirements written down, we started brainstorming and envisioning how the product would look or work. And here is a simple of design planning. We also call it mapping. Once we had initial design, we reviewed during our sprint planning meeting. Team members reviewed the design and provided feedback. We recorded all their feedback using a Kanban board. And if you look at to the right, you will see an actual Kanban board where all the reviews are recorded. And if you don't want to do like old-fashioned way, you can do it digitally. And there are apps that you can use to do all the storyboarding and collaborating with other people. And here is a picture of InVision, which is basically helps you to design a product and collaborate with everyone else in your team. So once you implemented all the suggested changes and requirements, we came up with high-fidelity prototype. As you can see here, the first screen gives you the option to sign up, log in, or check out as a guest. The second screen shows you a user is looking for a digital camera, and all the digital camera that we have available is listed there. Third screen shows you the checkout process of this e-commerce application. And the fourth one is basically giving you the confirmation that your order has placed, and here is a tracking link that you can like follow through where your package is at. Luckily, there were no changes. So all the team members were happy with the final design, and they green lighted the prototype. And I was ready to transfer over to the development team.
Well, to create our Google Shop website, we need to follow some steps. First, we need to gather requirements where we identify things like the Google Shop website purpose, goals, and target audience. Our next step is planning. In this step, we include Google Shop website structure and technologies that we are able to use. Now, third step is design creation. In this stage, not only do we focus on wireframe models and typical style, but also on the usability of the user interface for the best possible user experience. Our next step is very important part of the process, which is called code building. Here at Developer, we write the codes in our development environment and create the website using the hypertext markup language, in short, which is called HTML. Besides that, we also use CSS and JavaScript, and when we add new code, then they create a new build. Then we test all the technical features like code and scripts compatibility with major browsers, but we also ask ourselves if the Google Shop website really fulfilled client's purpose. Then the final step is code deployment. Once developers have written code for Google Shop site, they need to place it on the website. This whole process is called code deployment. After we launch the Google Shop website, our job is definitely not done yet. We always monitor what's happening to fix any bugs. We can also manage to feature maintenance and updates. As you have just seen, this is a very complex process, so we have a DevOps process in practice, which is basically a combination of two words, development and operations. The reason we are practicing DevOps to shorten the system development lifecycle while delivering features, fixes, and updates frequently in close alignment with our Google Shop business objectives. And we can get all this through our DevOps pipeline, CI or CD deployment. Basically, CI stands for continuous integration and CD stands for continuous development. There are various types of developers. As you can see here, I am the first avatar known as a front-end developer. So basically, everything that you see when you are navigating around the Google Shop website, like from fonts, colors to drop-down menus and sliders, is controlled by front-end developer. In order to execute those objectives as a front-end developers, I have to coordinate with three main languages, which I already mentioned in my previous slide: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript programming. Now, you might have a question. What makes the front end of your website possible? Where is all the data stored, right? There is always where my colleagues or team members Shamika comes in as a backend developer, as you can see the second avatar in the screen. So the backend of a website consists of a server, an application, and a database. A backend developer builds and maintains the technology that powers those components which together enable the user-facing side of the Google Shop website to even exist in the first place. However, as a front-end developers, often I need to learn those additional backend skills and vice versa. Lastly, the full-stack developer has a capability to work as both front-end developer and backend developer as cross-functionally. This is a flowchart of full-stack development, which is combination of front-end developer, backend developer, database DevOps, and mobile app developer, as you can see here.
Yes, I'm representing company Google software development team. Here I'm specifically talking about software developers in the team who build the website or mobile app. In simple terms, developer develop the features laid out in the sprint. For every software development team, there's a lead developer. The lead developer is responsible for overall planning, execution, and deliver success software solution at the end of each sprint. You know already what sprint is. Remember, more importantly, lead developer is the connector between our development team and the other business-oriented department in our organization. As an example, imagine in the middle of the sprint, our client needs to add new security feature to the Google Shopping cart. Do you think it's a good idea in the middle of the sprint? No, because we are in the middle of the sprint, we plan everything in advance. But the development team still has the authority to make final call whether to say yes or no. So lead developers should be capable of handling internal and external pressure in this kind of situations. All the other developers in our team, they are senior developers with various technical skills and more than 5 years industrial experience. This slide shows most commonly used programming languages based on pure data. JavaScript, you can see JavaScript has become more and more popular among developer community. But the company Google development team consists of knowledgeable front-end, back-end, and full-stack developers. They are capable of using any of those languages. This slide shows top 10 frameworks for web Development 2020. You may be wondering what's frameworks going to be. Framework provide a platform to develop software application. It provides different tools and designing procedures in order to create better software. If you're building an e-commerce site, it is important that you have AngularJS in your toolkit for better results. This slide shows IDE. IDE is Integrated Development Environment. This is an extremely important tool for software development because developers can implement their database, design user interfaces, write programs, compile, test, debug, and create these diagrams in IDE. My personal, you can see top 10 development IDEs in 2020. My personal preference is Visual Studio. Obviously, it is complex for beginners, but our experienced developers then live with it. So overall, this is the outline that I can give you about the developers in our Scrum team without being more technical. But I'm pretty sure our developers, they are updated more technologies. So for them, the sky is the limit.
Now, we will explain the Google Shop QA process. The first step in the Google Shop software development lifecycle test execution is a smoke testing. It is a kind of software testing performed after software build to determine that the critical functions of the program are working fine. It is executed before any detailed functional or regression tests are executed on the software build. Basically, it is just like quickly scanning of major functionality. We do not need to write test cases in this stage. 95 to 100% smoke tests were automated. We just logged the defect into Jira if any bugs were found.
After smoke or sanity testing, our QA process continued with functional testing. Functional testing made sure that the software performs as it is required by the acceptance criteria. In order to perform functional testing, these are the steps we followed. Number 1, requirement analysis, design analysis for testing, test planning, test case writing, test case execution. Let's talk about the very first step of functional testing, which is requirement analysis in this phase. We identified customers' need, evaluated the system for feasibility, performed economic and technical analysis, allocated function to system elements, established a schedule and constraints, created system definition. Once we were successfully done with our requirement analysis, we went over to design analysis and testing. This phase can start for a given test level once test conditions are identified and enough information is available to enable the production of test cases. In this phase, we as QA and UX designer worked closely to successfully complete the phase. Third step of the process is test planning. We had a sprint planning meeting. Scrum Master and BAs identified tests that needs immediate attention as per the priorities. In our Google Shopping project, we listed down all the possible scenarios for the given specification. Based on these scenarios, test cases are prepared. Fourth step is to write test cases. When we have finalized test planning, we wrote all of our test cases into Jira, which is a collaborative tool that allows Scrum team members to have a common space to work on our project. The purpose of the test are to ensure that different user interface prompts such as credit card, bills, and other collecting aspects of the Google Shop are working properly. For instance, we make sure that the user data is transmitted over a secure channel. Credit card information should be stored in an encrypted format. Check or validity of credit card information required for the purchase to go through, and test that all fields are working as they are designed. Execution is the last step of functional testing. We execute test cases to find bugs and errors that may hinder the successful production of our application. Test case execution is the last step of functional testing. We execute test cases to find bugs and errors that may hinder the successful production of our application. In this Google Shop project, we also did comparison of test case expected result to test case actual result obtained from the test execution run. That will determine whether the test has a pass or fail status. Here are some samples of test cases we did in Jira for our project. If you look at first picture, you'd notice it has 3 columns: test step, test data, and test result. This is simply to make sure that our expected step meets result. We also call them user stories. Stories are moved over to backlog and from there to designated sprints. This is a picture of Spring screenshot from Jira. Positive and negative testing is also part of our functional testing. In this phase, we try valid and invalid data to have access to the system. In positive testing, we have an end user based system. Now, under the system test, we had many components which, when we couple together, achieve the user scenario. We use the decision-based table to see the possible outcome when a particular condition is met. We ran an alternate path test to run to validate all the possible ways that exist other than the main flow to accomplish a function. In our negative testing, we ensure the application can gracefully handle invalid input or unexpected user behavior. Integration testing means combining multiple platforms or databases to work together to successfully perform a common goal. For our project, we tested the payment method, checkout method process that is embedded in our application, but it integrates Visa, MasterCard, and other credit card companies. In the phase, we tested the followings like tested user registration and authentic product catalog, card, billing, payment gateway integration, shipping, and package tracking.
Yes, whenever developers change or modify their software, even a small tweak can have unexpected consequences. In regression testing, we test what to do. We run in functional or non-functional tests to make sure that software has not broken any existing functionality after new code has been deployed. Think regression testing as testing your food as you cook and adding ingredients according to the recipe. As you cook your food, the dish will change the base on a whole host of different factors. If you add more seasoning, what happens then? The flavor of the dish will shift. This would be regression. In regression testing, what's the purpose? The purpose is to catch bug that may have accidentally introduced into new build or release, and to ensure that previously eradicated bugs continues to stay dead. Regression tests can be performed manually on small projects, but in most cases, repeating tests each time is time-consuming and it's complicated. So automated testing tool is typically required. In the bottom of the slide, you can see most commonly used automated regression tools. Among them, Selenium is most widely used among software testers.
By definition, non-functional testing are like a type of software testing to check for non-functional aspects of a software application. So I guess I'm using the term twice, but what does that even mean? So previously, Amit Bhai explained what are functional testing. So over here, this is pretty much everything that's not functional and that are not specified by that cannot be addressed by the user during functional testing. And it's usually customer focused. So a couple of the ones I've pointed down below are like load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, and so on. So what do you see over here are necessary things that the customer would find using our Google Shopping app much more smoothly and comfortably. For instance, a good difference could be like thinking in functional testing, we look to make sure the login credentials are met so that the user can sign up. Over here, we're trying to find out, if the database is loading up in a span of 2 seconds, or something like what happens when 1,000 number of users are loading up to our database, is it crashing or not? So these are a couple of the examples I've also mentioned in my next slide. So these are a couple of very common examples of what we look for in our non-functional testing. So things like talked about application load time should be more than 5 seconds for 1,000 users. That is something like performance testing that we're looking into. And at the same time, if you're trying to make sure the software runs comfortably in both Windows and Mac version, over here we're looking to see something like compatibility testing for our app. So the thing is, that's like what we are testing for in our non-functional testing stage of our QA process. And oftentimes it's done by these 3 common tools, like that I put the logo below, like JMeter by Apache and Load UI as also as Load Runner. But before, again, I want to reiterate that these are just some examples of non-functional testing. There's more than 100 types of non-functional testing. So I didn't want to go over all of them, but there are more. So this is just an example of how we did in our project. But there are more, multiple other ways we are also performing in building our app.
User acceptance testing, which is basically the last step of QA process. This part is performed by end users or someone who is not part of our Scrum team. In our case, we hired an user as an independent consultant to test out our app and to see if there is any bugs. And she performed all the testing and saw it was easy to use and satisfies all the needs. Once we got a confirmation from her, we knew that our product is ready to be shipped.
All right. So let's do a quick little recap. So we've met our business analyst whose great organization skills were able to transfer all of these ideas into a user experience. Let's give it up for our amazing developers who've utilized so many different programs. They've used so many different tools and learned so many different languages just to help us get to where we are today. Last but not least, our QA testers for the various methods of testing, for the rigorous hours of testing, showing us how many different ways we can do a task and how we can make sure that everything is becoming deployable. After 6 long months and tireless work from our Scrum team, we are happy to announce that our product is ready for deployment and will be launched directly to you. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you enjoy Google Shopping.